guys, welcome back to the kitchen. We have Lyosha with us again today, and we are going to discuss a topic that is a little odd, and that is Soviet beer. When people think of the Soviet Union and they think about drinking, they usually think about vodka. That sort of persists to this day. When you think about Eastern Europe, you don't think about beer or wine, you think about vodka. The Soviet Union is situated firmly in the vodka belt, but beer culture did exist to some degree. It was just very strange and very different and sort of alien to a lot of Slavic people, and that's what we're going to discuss today. In the late Tsarist period, there was some sort of beer culture that existed. Beer was produced, but again, was not very popular. Vodka was the main drink of choice for Eastern Europeans and Slavs. When the Soviets came to power, they sort of destroyed what little existing beer culture there was, and the sort of famines and poverty that was created by World War II meant that grain was sort of in short supply, so beer production absolutely fell off a cliff. But this sort of changed in the 50s because a lot of the post-war acquisitions that the Soviet Union got were in beer-producing areas. So you have Western Ukraine, Western Belarus, and the Baltic regions who have really, really rich beer-producing traditions. So that was sort of slowly incorporated into the Soviet Union and kind of stolen, actually. And that's sort of what we're going to explain today. What was it like to drink beer in the Soviet Union? How strange was it? How was it possible? And where could you go to do it?
Жить, как говорится, хорошо.
А хорошо жить еще лучше. Точно.
So actually beer in Soviet Union appeared again like totally new drink like in 1950s after the World War II. In general, Soviet commercials sometimes in this period told people that beer is good for health, good for mood, good for lunch and something like this. That sounds funny from our perspective for sure, but it was reality.
Yeah, so obviously we know now that beer is not good for your health. It's calorie rich. I guess that's the only benefit that it had during that period. But alcohol is bad for you. Duh. In the growing beer culture that emerged in the 50s, I'm not sure to what extent this is true, but a lot of it came from these sort of post-war acquisition territories, mostly from the Baltics and Western Ukraine. So you have a very vodka-centric culture that is slowly sort of incorporating beer into it, and most of them may not even know like what it even is. Like, why would I do this? It's so inefficient. Like, why would you drink beer when you could just take a couple shots and get to the same place? So a lot of the names, a lot of the styles, a lot of the sort of convention around brewing was taken from either old Germanic breweries that existed in pre-Tsarist Russia. They were sort of privatized and then run by the state, or they were acquired in the Baltics or these other regions that were acquired in post-World War II Soviet Union. So that's why I think that there's a lot of sort of stolen valor around the beer in the Soviet period because it's not native to the Soviet culture, if there is such a thing, because there's so many different nations there. Some of you may be thinking, why the hell do they have a 3-liter glass jug of beer sitting open, slowly getting flat in front of them, flanked by fish? So this is what an average, excellent summer weekday would look like to a well-off Soviet factory worker, probably in the 70s. In the 50s, people started having access to beer a bit more, but it was not super common. And this is typically how it was sold. We talked about kvass. I talked about kvass in an earlier video, that it was sold in these giant yellow trailers.
Yes, and beer was sold in the same giant yellow bottles on a trailer. So like if you want to buy and bring it to your friends, bring some beer at home, you just bring some type of jar like this. It's 3 liters, so like almost 1 gallon. Yes, and you buy it and bring it home or bring it to your friends.
In some of the books that I've read and things like that, they talk a lot about the different types of beer that existed in the Soviet Union. So some of them were named after regions or cities or styles. There was like a Ukrainsky pivo for Ukrainian. There was Lvivskoye beer that still exists today. A lot of that stuff was just sort of false advertisement because a lot of these styles of beers were maybe made locally. They weren't generally available broadly. because the beer that was made in the Soviet Union did not ship well. So you had to eat it within a week or so of sort of bottling or putting it into the kegs. Because it was typically not pasteurized, so it could go bad quickly.
And if we talk about this draft beer from a giant yellow barrels on a trailer, when you buy it and bring it home, usually you should drink it in 1 day or maximum 2 days, because like it will totally be
Spoiled.
totally be spoiled, because like usually on Soviet beer factories nobody cared about cleaning those barrels after they become empty. So like next portion of beer is filled and many bacteria still living in the barrel. So like they totally destroy it in like 1 day.
And these sort of trailer barrel things, I'll put a picture up. That's typically how they locally distributed a lot of liquids. So beer, kvass, milk, maybe even like juices and things like that could be put into these barrels.
Or wine.
Wine for sure. So you have these large metallic tanks on a trailer that are never clean because no one gave a fuck. And then you're drinking whatever, maybe it was one brand from one place and then another brand from another place, and then they could just mix and match. So if you've ever had a beer from a bar where they don't clean the tap lines frequently or well enough, you can taste it. Now imagine it's a trailer that sits outside in the sun all day and has people's dirty little hands touching those nozzles.
And some Soviet fans still say that at the period the beer was so natural and cool that it was kept only 1 day normal. But in fact it's totally opposite. It was so awfully made.
The beer would go bad typically, and you would have to bring your own container to the sort of distribution point. So a typical one is this sort of 3-liter jug. But here behind me, I have the Party Boy, and this is a big one. So this is, I believe, 10 liters. So, and it's still got the same top as this. So it's not really made for fermenting much of anything else, because you can't even get your hand inside here. So only a liquid would be put into this. So this is a party jug. So this is the equivalent of box wine. This is the equivalent of, PJs or Jungle Juice, whatever party punch you're going to make up. This is probably kept exclusively for beer, because I don't know any family that could drink this much milk or kvass.
But anyway, that most typical was 3-liter jar, because like they were widespread, because not only beer or kvass you can buy in it, but also many pickles were sold in stores in the same jars, like tomatoes, cucumbers, and every family had it like an universal jar for all the situations in the life. Sometimes they can be filled like with samogon or vodka also.
Yeah. So one thing that also needs to be kept in mind is that the Soviet Union did not, like much of the world at the period, didn't have plastic at all. So every single thing was reused because they didn't throw anything away. Even today, a lot of people from the Soviet period who are not super old, like 50s, 60s, they never throw anything away. So you'll go to some granny's house who's not super old, 60's not ancient, and she will have hundreds of glass jars.
Yes, for sure.
In her cabinet.
Even when plastic bottles first appeared, many people used them a few times because it was like very practical. Why not? Yeah, it has normal cap with it, and it keeps beer and any liquid inside. So even plastic is used, but it's like a totally Soviet habit to use it many times, not once.
And also, we're going to point out, like, the Soviet period, when you would go to a bar or sort of these draft points, this is the typical style of beer glass that you would have. So it would look kind of like this, sort of like an old cheap Czech glass. The Czech glasses are typically half-liter and a bit bigger and nicer, but this is kind of how they were shaped.
But as usually people in Soviet Union were poor, they often steal those glasses at home because didn't want to buy and just steal it. And then in many bars and draft points, they just shifted it to typical half-liter jars. Much less aesthetic, but nobody needs it to steal because every Soviet people have had it at home enough.
Okay, so plastics didn't exist in the Soviet period. People would mostly get this in jars, but all the advertisements I see, all the written articles that I've come across in my cookbooks and things, they all show bottles of beer. So bottles of beer had to exist, right? they did.
А началось все с Москвы. Давно уж. Выбирали там пиво, которое можно было бы сделать главным в стране.
So no conversation about Soviet beer would be anywhere near complete if we didn't talk about Zhigulevskoye. Am I saying that correctly?
Almost correctly. Let it be. Let it be. This name sounds a bit weird for English speakers, but it's like mountains called Zhiguli Mountains, somewhere in Russia. I don't know exactly where, and it was just the name beer from Zhiguli Mountains, so like Zhigulevskoye.
So a lot of the factories that were sort of privatized, if they didn't produce some local variant of beer, or if it didn't exist there, they would just make this Zhigulevskoye beer.
Yes.
And it was the only ubiquitous beer in the entire Soviet Union. People may have heard of Baltic beer or like seen something about like Lviv beer or Ukrainian beer, but this was everywhere. It was the only universal in Soviet beer.
And I think that's the reason of popularity. Also, it was like typical beers that personally I like. It's like something like light lager, maybe something like, I don't know, Bud Light or something like this. So beer with typical beer taste and nothing more.
Yeah, so when I talked about sort of the other regionalized specialty beers, especially from the Baltics and sort of the foreign nations that were acquired, they have a long tradition and history of beer. So you have very specific beer types and names and variations and ways to make it. And the Soviet Union, just like, whatever. This was like the vast lion's share of all of the beer that was made was Zhigulevskoye. Which, isn't there a car that's Zhiguli?
Yeah, yes, the car Zhiguli, Lada, well known in the word Lada inside Soviet Union was called Zhiguli, also named after those mountains. So like, and the most popular beer and the most popular car had almost the same name. Car was Zhiguli, and beer was Zhigulevskoye.
Now you just need a Zhiguli vodka and a Zhiguli cigarette.
And call your son Zhiguli.
So yeah, it's... And so this is sort of, you see this like blue and white stripe here, it's mimicking that style of the Zhiguli label. So if you see anything like that, it's kind of aping that. And all of these say, like, so this says like a fair price. This one is the most traditional looking, I think, and this is from Obolon. You even can't see the brand name, it's like so hidden. This is for these old like Soviet fossils.
Yes.
Who dream of their youth, as you mentioned, when their dick still worked, and that's why they sort of want this beer. So I imagine that all of these taste almost identical, even though they're from 3 different breweries. And Zhiguli was produced in different breweries, with different styles, different brewmasters, different water. Like, you talked about Bud Light, and Bud Light is standardized. It's so standard. Sure. So I imagine that someone from like Tomsk, if they went to like Tbilisi, they would taste a totally different Zhiguli. Like,
probably, and especially nobody cared about quality. So because it was like an economy when there was no problem to sell anything. So producers didn't care about taste. In fact, people would buy it.
It's like, no. What are you going to do? Go somewhere else?
Yes, yes. Good luck. Yes.
Total lack of options. Utter disrespect for the product that they were making. These weren't, brewmasters who, I had a passion when I was a little boy, or my great-grandfather was a brewer. They're just like assigned a job, so they're like, okay, you brew beer. And they'd probably be super excited about it, because that meant that they could steal beer. So it was probably a really, desirable job to work at a brewery.
But not so desirable as working at Vodka factory.
But yeah, this has, even in like the sort of the demarcations and stuff, it's still got that like Soviet style. A lot of things would have the same like labeling and things. Like this stamp at the bottom, it feels very Soviet. So they're really trying to sort of capture that. Obolon is these are all Ukrainian beers, but Obolon is one of my least favorite. Umansky is okay, and Opilia is actually quite nice. So I think that I'll probably try this Opilia. Opilia, you're breaking my heart. You're shaking my confidence, baby.
And also, fun fact, then there was some deposit on every glass bottle, so it can be reused. So you just, when you finish your glass beer, you bring it to the special point, give those bottles to to guys and give some money. For example, like giving them 10 bottles, you can buy 1 bottle of beer, something like that. So it was quite cheap. And then when the Soviet Union collapsed and we slowly became rich, nobody cared about this. And usually we in 90s and 2000s we just thrown away those bottles. Nobody reused it. Only like some absolutely like homeless alcoholics were taking it and bringing to this point
from the trash. And
from the trash and giving some money to drink again. And that was such a surprise when we were traveling to Europe. The Europeans do it all the time, and all their bottles are so damaged. For us, it's like, what, are you so poor that you need to give those bottles back? But it's normal in Europe, but it's totally not normal. It's like a symbol of poorness for us, like to give those bottles back. Like it's so cheap. Why would you do it?
But yeah, like you'll still see people here sort of rifling through the trash. They're usually very sort of poverty-stricken, usually older, maybe homeless. And they're pulling out aluminum cans and stuff like that, but people don't do it broadly here because they see it as a sign of poverty. Mm-hmm. And whereas Western Europe sees it as sort of a social obligation or sort of a civic duty. So we've talked about what it's like to drink with friends, in a relaxed environment, or what it's like to drink at home, and then how you would move this beer about. But what about bars and taverns? It was such a huge portion of culture in a lot of Western Europe, but did it exist in the Soviet Union?
Yes, it was much less in Soviet Union for sure, but like in 1970s, after oil crisis in 1973, Soviet Union got much more money from selling oil, and at least they decided to do something for their people, not just produce more weapon. So like many beer bars were created, but for sure by modern standards or by Western standards they looked really pathetic. But at least there was a place where you can come with your buddies or come here alone, buy some beer, drink some beer, and eat some snacks with beer for sure.
As Lyosha mentioned, these places are sort of hovels. They're not made for comfort or beauty like anything in the Soviet Union. You would just come in. There might be a little like glass case where they like have something there. Typically like fish, something dried, maybe something pickled. And then you would order whatever you got, and they would have all these single round high tables that you would stand at.
Usually you stand near the table, not even sitting there, but just standing. Yes.
Yeah, only the bourgeoisie are allowed to sit down. So during this phase, before it sort of transitioned into the late or post-Soviet period, the most common snacks were these dried fish. So Lyosha, you told me an interesting fact, because these are like salted to hell.
Yes, salted to hell, and not only salted, they're dried to hell. It could be so hard, like really as a piece of wood. And to soften it, you just have to take it. Sometimes, for example, if you're in a bar, okay. But if you, for example, sitting somewhere on the stairs, you use all your force to hit it on some hard surface, like to make it soften, and then clean it and make it able to eat.
Sort of like an old guy in an American bar in the 80s or 90s, and he's packing a pack of cigarettes. You know, he's knocking the tobacco down, but it's an old Soviet dude banging a fish against a concrete wall.
Yes,
it's the same sort of like thoughtful, sort of introspective moment. Maybe he's saying something clever to his friends. You know, if I was Brezhnev, I would blah, 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 like.
Usually you had a minor number of fishes, so like not a lot, and so professional Soviet guys could eat one such small fish, for example, for 1 hour, taking these small pieces and use them like a snack.
So talking about doing something for hours with almost no result, and that's a perfect time to mention semechki, or sunflower seeds. For Americans, this isn't incredibly culturally relevant, unless you're from the South and you play baseball, maybe. But for a lot of Slavs, semechki, or sunflower seeds, are one of the most popular snacks, with beer, without beer, at any time, at any age, anywhere. Sunflower seeds were sort of ubiquitous.
And for sure it was even popular in Tsar period, so it's not only Soviet, it was popular even much earlier.
So it's just something that you occupy yourself with to give you some small bit of salt and then some protein while you consume beer or while you literally do anything else. And even when cultural exchange students come to America from this post-Soviet sphere, at least several years ago, they would have to tell them, if you want to find sunflower seeds, you would go and buy bird seed. Because they would sell sunflower seeds as bird seed. So that was like one of the few places they could get it if you lived in, some rural northern area. As anyone that watched our Soviet poverty chaos menu video knows, that you would just make stale bread and then rub garlic on this. That's exactly what this is. Damn, drop 2. That's exactly what this is. You would just like rub garlic on it or salt or just eat it as is. And it's designed to be sort of just a snack and some way to use old stale bread. Moskovich?
Yes.
So here we have old Soviet newspaper with a Moskovich, one of the iconic cars. And also when they would serve fish with newspaper, they would put it all together and then wrap it up. And you would, because there was no plastic, this was just a super common way to transport fish for beer snacks.
And then you come and sit with your buddy. It can be even in the bar, but in the bar, for sure, nobody cares about cleaning their tables. So tables are quite dirty. Some pieces of food, of beer on it. So if you want to stay relatively clean, you take your own newspaper, put it on a table. Also, it's practical way to drink somewhere in a park, for example. Yes, because like also you can put it somewhere on some surface. Soviet newspaper was physically clean, but the information it was bringing, but it was much worse. Take a small piece of fish, drink, and eat, and repeat.
And repeat endlessly if necessary. The reason that fish was so popular is, one, it's a really convenient way to sort of distribute protein and it doesn't spoil. But two, it's got a super powerful taste to it. So dried fish, it's got like a concentrated fish flavor to it. So when you're drinking this sort of like terribly produced and certainly watered down beer, you're sort of masking that flavor with fish.
Normal, typical Soviet guy will leave only clean bones, so nothing stayed on them.
Like a Tom and Jerry cartoon.
Yes.
So this is plotva. So this is a fish that's super common almost everywhere. And if you've played the Witcher games, you might think that his horse is named Roach for cockroach. But it's actually named after this. The name of this fish is Roach. And Geralt of Riviera's horse is called plotva after this fish, not a cockroach. So there's a fun fact for you.
Тонут всегда в воде. Крикнул он в день суда. И купит людей не пиво.
We talked about the beer snacks for the everyday man, but what does a man of means have with his beer? Probably don't want to eat dried bread and old salted fish. You'll eat something with a little bit more substance. A lot of the cookbooks that I've seen would always have sausages as sort of the main accoutrement to beer. Sausages and green peas. I don't know why. I've never seen beer with peas in my life anywhere, but in the cookbooks it's always mentioned. Lyosha said that the most popular snack of all time with beer is this.
Is crawfish, like it's Soviet lobster, but crawfish lives in river or in lake, not in the ocean. So like if you go with some buddies and you have some extra money, you will always look for crawfish. Like crawfish in Soviet and post-Soviet territories is like a brother of beer. Nobody ever eats crawfish like alone. It's like even sounds stupid here. So to drink beer with crawfish is like absolutely cultural tradition here.
And anyone from the States, especially in the South and Louisiana, we have crawfish boils and things like that. And there's beer that's ever present there as well. So it's very similar. The spice profiles are quite different. It's less heavy, but it's certainly culturally relevant for Slavs and very connected to beer culture. These are the typical snacks that the more elite would have. So a sausage and a bit of beer.
And for sure crawfish. I just can't wait to try it because I personally really like crawfishes.
I did a chip video, and a lot of the chip flavors are considered, a lot of chips are considered beer snacks, and a lot of the chip flavors are crawfish and crab flavored. So there's some sort of like mental connection with having this snack and beer that's sort of pervasive in Slavic culture.
Я не могу.
Че ты?
Аллергия.
Чего?
So we discussed how the Soviet sphere was sort of able to incorporate this new drink or rebirth drink into their dietary concerns with the snacks that they created. But how does a culture that is vodka-centric incorporate beer into their drinking schedule? You add vodka to it. Duh!
And then one of the most popular snack or even addition or even chaser of beer was vodka.
It's insane that you would add vodka to beer, but after sort of studying the history of beer in the Soviet Union, I understand it a bit more. There was a phrase, "Pivo bez vodki, деньги на ветер." So it's like you're wasting your money if you're only drinking beer with no vodka. Vodka was added because beer was watered down so thoroughly at almost every stage of its distribution. Before it left the brewery, it was watered down so that the brewers could steal some and sell it. At distribution points, it was watered down so that people could make additional profits from it. And then even the guys who would take it home in these 3-liter jars would probably drink a little bit and then add some water. So by the time that you got it, this 3.5% alcohol drink was probably half or even worse.
And also, anyway, Soviet beer, even if it's not mixed with water, was not like really something complicated taste or something for snobs or some. It was like typical beer, not too bad, not too good. So adding some vodka in it didn't ruin the taste. So it just felt almost the same taste, but your mind feel much more happy with it.
And that sort of also makes sense as to why a lot of these Zhigulevskoye knockoffs are like 3% alcohol, because modern beer is around 5%, maybe even a little higher, especially if you're drinking like a Baltic porter that can be like 7. So these old style Soviet beers are really low ABV, and they sort of corrected that by adding vodka to it.
I think we here have a real typical way to make this cocktail, because like it's a half a liter of beer, and this also, and it's 100 grams, so like 100 grams of vodka. So we divided by two friends, like 50 for me, 50 for Matthew, and that's a typical Yorsh consumed in bars or outside, somewhere outside in the Soviet Union.
So he mentioned Yorsh, and that's the name of this. So it's a beer cocktail that is absolutely without elegance. You would literally just pour vodka into beer. And it sort of makes up for the fact that it's been cut and watered down at every point of distribution, and at its core, it kind of sucks. So you have really bad Soviet beer, watered down at several stages, that you're eating with fish. Of course, adding a little bit of vodka makes more sense when you take it into sort of consideration with the holistic way that it was consumed. Oh, shit.
Yeah, let it.
Yummy! Well, vodka's a neutral grain spirit. It doesn't have any distinct characteristics. It's sort of neutral as is. So adding it to almost anything doesn't really change the sort of mother vessel, like, you know, whatever you're adding it to. So I guess that makes sense.
But it changed your mood.
Hopefully for the better. So again, Yorsh, a Soviet beer cocktail.
Absolutely. The taste of beer almost didn't change.
It really does just taste like beer, but with a little bit of like some weird aftertaste to it. So it's really almost unchanged, especially when you consider the fact that this beer is not of high quality, and you've also got like salted fish in your mouth. But this is Horilka from Lviv that I bought with Vlad when we were in Lviv last. I don't think do people still do this today? Like, honestly, or just as sort of a joke?
No, not a joke. Personally, I do it sometime. No, not a joke, totally.
Don't do anything this guy does. Yeah, so that is a way that beer was sort of adapted to the Slavic palate, both in terms of beer snacks and beer consumption. I guess they just didn't really understand oh, I'm going to gently enjoy my evening and have a slight buzz. Like, no. This is about the destination, not the journey.
I think no, you're not totally right, because it's destination and journey in both way. Because like, yes, I want to drink beer, but yes, I want to get drunk at the end of the evening. It's obvious, yes. Not like to getting drunk as fast as is possible. It's my goal, but like drink beer with my friends and then get drunk, or drink alone. Why not?
We've talked about beer snacks, beer culture, beer distribution. But what about the end of the Soviet Union? There was probably some part that beer played there. We're going to talk about that.
О чем вы разговаривали до моего появления?
О политике, естественно, говорим, о повышении цен. Что из нас делают дураков. Думают, что цены повысят, значит, жизнь будет лучше.
So, since I don't want to continue with that horrific cocktail...
But I do want.
You're a braver or dumber guy than me. I'm not sure which. Maybe both.
Both.
So we've talked about how the Soviet Union has sort of like incorporated this beverage into its social milieu. But one of the things that sort of came to its detriment was the fact that taverns are a hotbed for chit-chat.
Yes, so the Soviet bars became the best place to meet your friends or meet strangers, talk to them, and some alcohol in beer, and especially vodka in beer, gives you a bit more free talk. And then times changed and winds of freedom start blowing when perestroika started. Those Soviet bars become like something like places to discuss, some almost like political clubs where people can come, talk about some sorts of themes they couldn't even think a few years ago. So those places where people were drinking beer just had a lot of political, even influential for the whole country.
Yeah, so when I learned about this, I realized that this definitely mirrors sort of the revolution in America. So a lot of the founding fathers would meet in taverns. So they would meet in taverns and then sort of discuss plans for revolution. So we had intellectuals who were meeting together in bars drinking beer. A lot of America was cider-based, but a lot of the Soviet period was vodka and beer-based. So you have these people that are coming. They're not just sort of dull workers, but they're the intelligentsia. So you have like the smartest people coming in and discussing political ideas. And since the sort of restriction had been relaxed, so you have like the terror of the Stalinistic reign, and then a slow thaw throughout that till Gorbachev, who sort of opened it with glasnost and perestroika and all this stuff. So people sort of met freely in bars in public. Usually it was at someone's home kitchen. If they were confident that no one would sort of tell on them or there was no listening device anywhere. Bars and beer became one of the foundational means for the collapse of the Soviet Union. It was just gave them a place to sort of have political discourse.
So maybe we can, we first said that beer was not meaning a lot for Soviet Union, but seems for collapse of Soviet Union, it meant a lot for sure.
So for something that was kind of stolen or appropriated or rebirthed after it was forgotten, it's kind of ironic that it was one of the things that led to the downfall of the Soviet Union. So having beer bars and a place where people could drink something but still remain cognizant enough to have a political discussion meant that you were sort of fostering a hotbed for political activity. And I'm curious if that trend is continuing because it does seem to sort of echo through history. But it's really funny to think about the fact that maybe if beer was never introduced into the Soviet Union, it would have slowed the collapse down just a little bit.
So thank you, beer, that you are in our life.
So thank you very much, beer. Thank you to all the cultures that sort of really trust and love and rely on beer. Things here have changed a lot. When I first came to Ukraine, the beer here was terrible, like universally terrible. But now they're really paying attention to the craft. They really care about how it's made. And I think that Ukraine is making some of the best beer in the world. But if you hear anyone tell you that Soviet beer was amazing, it's just because of nostalgia. Soviet beer was bad in almost every way. By almost every account, they're just thinking about the times when they were young and healthy and with friends, and it's really the nostalgia and those rose-tinted glasses that.
Yes, because as any other stuff in Soviet Union, there was no reason for beer to be good. Why would they produce good beer? For what?
Cheese was bad.
Yes.
All right, so that is sort of the full picture as to how and why and where and when and with who and what you would eat with it, a globalistic view as to beer in the Soviet Union, an appropriated snack that became one of the reasons that it fell. But here we have an assortment of post-Soviet beer snacks. But we're not going to talk about this today. Let us know if you guys want to hear a post-Soviet beer snack video, because this is when beer really comes into its own and really finds its place. It becomes something that is adopted into the Slavic culture instead of something that's just sort of stolen and worn as a badge. But that's a theme for a different time. Thank you guys very much for joining us. Lyosha, thank you as always for joining me.
Thank you for inviting.
If you saw our post on YouTube, you know that it was his birthday recently, so everyone give Lyosha a happy birthday. And I hope that you have many, many more.
And we will meet with you and film many interesting videos for our viewers. More
Absolutely.
and more and more. Cheers.
Thanks, guys, so much. And as always,
See you soon.
till next time. Yep, so this is an excellent transition. So we're not even drunk. We really haven't even drank anything yet. Like one beer.
But we want to.
Oh, we really want to.
Пиво, сделать его дешевым, доступным, и чтобы было культурно, чтобы можно было посидеть. Я правильно говорю?